I was cleaning our house and I walked into our bathroom and there were some shorts on the floor. I can still vividly remember the shorts. They were camouflage shorts. And when I picked them up, they were heavy. And I was like, what? Why are these heavy? So I dug through the pockets, and I wish I could explain what I felt at that moment, but there are no words. My world stopped. There was a plastic bag with some crystal-like substance and a pipe. It was true. He was on drugs. Now what in the world do I do? I called my friend and I needed to know what meth looked like. She described it, and that's exactly what was in his pockets. Needless to say, I went from numb to irate in 0.1 second. And went and asked him, confronted him, what is this? Of course it wasn't his. It's never his. It was never his. You know, somebody put that in his pocket. The stories that he would tell me, I wish I could remember them all because they're pretty creative, but it wasn't his. I was mad. They were screaming. I was screaming at him. He was screaming at me. And at that moment, I took our little boy. He was probably about 3 months old. I took him to my parents' house, and I drove back out to be with my son's father. Why did you do that? Because I refused to allow him to become a victim of this. And I refused to allow the father of my son to stay in this, to stay a drug addict, and to let this defeat him. So for the next 24 hours, for the next 7 days, I never left his side. I never brought up the drugs. I pretended like I believed them. They're not yours. So I followed him, I stayed with him, I worked with him. Anything he did, I did. And you would think we had a terrible week, but we actually had an amazing week. We laughed. You know, when I would watch him from afar, I would cry because all I saw was a walking dead man. He was probably smaller than I was, and at the time, you know, I know I would say he would disappear, but it wasn't long enough for me to see the change in his body. But he could wear my clothes, and I guess that never dawned on me because I was small, which meant as a man, he was very small. So during that time, I was talking to some of his friends, and they were willing to do anything and everything to get him help. So during that week, I went and talked with a inpatient drug facility, or inpatient psych facility actually. Mental health, we will go with mental health. And I called them, I called the cops. They worked together, and I had him committed. I will never forget that day. I remember he wanted a burger. I brought him a burger home. He had put it in the microwave. He had been doing some things downstairs. He was a mechanic, so maybe he had been working on, there's no telling what he was doing, but when he came back upstairs, he was about to get his burger out of the microwave, and I heard, we had a gravel driveway, and I heard a vehicle pulling in. It was a cop. And he looked at me and said, don't worry about it, it's probably so-and-so doing something. And I knew it wasn't. I knew it was me. They called the cops, and I asked them when I called them, I said, please don't cuff him. I was like, just please take him. So they came, they cuffed him. So I had to watch that. He was telling me, it's gonna be okay, baby, it's gonna be okay. You know, everything's okay. They didn't search him. So I said, before they put him in the cop car, I said, please search him, check his pockets. You know, well, he doesn't have anything on him. Check his pockets. So they checked him, of course, he had stuff on him. So needless to say, they got him, they drove him 2 hours away to an inpatient facility. His mom and I drove over there the next day, and to watch her son battling addiction almost 20 years later broke my heart, because now I had a kid. I had a little boy, and this was her little boy fighting for his life, and I was going to do everything I could to make sure he didn't lose his life. He was mad, he was angry, he was mad at his mom. Said things you should never say, but he was detoxing. He wouldn't submit to a drug test, and at that point, I left. I couldn't do it. When I say I left the facility, went back to our house, and I tried to think of a plan. What can I do? He came home, and I remember I was getting ready for church. He came home, and he got on his knees, And he just he just begged me to listen to him, that he had to tell me something. And I said, I don't want to hear it. I'm going to church. And at that moment, I left him, probably at his most vulnerable state. When he was about to pour his heart out to me, I said, no, I don't want to hear it. Me and our son, we're going to church. The rest will be next. But until then, that's how my world was flipped upside down. And that's just a little bit of it. But to just give you a glimpse of our story, his story, my story, our son's story. That's where it all began. Actually, that's not where it began, but that's where it started, where I could physically see something, that had been rumored. I could lay eyes on it and know that rumor was true. It wasn't just a rumor. So at that moment, I had to make a decision. Will I stay and fight, or will I leave?